Welcome to Excel Magic Trick number 1360. Hey, if you want to download this Excel file or the other files that go along with Excel Magic Trick 1360 so you can follow along, click on the link below the video. Wow, you're not going to believe this video. We're going to talk about Power BI Desktop. And we're going to visualize Excel data dynamically. And we're going to see that Power BI Desktop is an amazing all-in-one tool. Now, this is our goal. We have a bunch of Excel files, which we'll go look at in just a moment. We need to consolidate those into a single proper data set. We're going to use Power BI Desktop to import the data, clean and transform it, then bring it into Power BI Desktop and create this amazing dynamic visualization. Now, what is Power BI Desktop and what makes it so amazing? Well, this free downloadable tool combines Excel's Power Query, Power Pivot data model, DAX formulas, and charting, and all sorts of visualizations into one free tool. Now, I want to go look at the Excel files. Now, when you download the files, you're going to have to download a zip folder called Excel Magic Trick 1360 source Excel files. And here are the files. I'm going to open up Arizona. Now, in the Arizona file, we have a table. And this table is the same table in each one of the other state Excel files. We have date, store, zip code, product, payment type, units, amount of sale, revenue discount, and cost of goods sold. Now, on each sheet that contains a table we want, we're going to have the state name. Now, when we try to import this Excel file, because it's a file, there can potentially be many objects that get imported into Power BI Desktop or Power Query for that matter. That means objects like these sheets. Over here we have an Excel table. If I go to the Define Name dropdown, I even have a print area on this sheet. There will actually be an attempt to import that. Over here, we have a defined name, and we even have a filter area. So what that means is when you're trying to import, for us, just this single table from this Excel workbook, we have to make sure to properly filter out all objects except for sheets that contain state names. All right, I'm going to close this Excel file. Back over in our Excel Magic Trick 1360, on the Manager table, there is a lookup table where we have the unique list of zip codes for each one of our stores and the manager name. We're going to have to get this table as well as all of these Excel files into Power BI Desktop. Now, if you don't have Power BI Desktop, why would you go and download it for free if you have Excel? Well, one main reason is that the visualization tools and the connectedness between each one of the visualizations is more amazing over in Power BI Desktop than it is in Excel. For example, here's the final result over in Power BI Desktop. Watch this. I have Oregon selected, manager gross profit, product, payment method, a map, even some metrics here. If I click on Washington, instantly everything updates. If I click on New Mexico, boom, everything is interconnected. That is amazing. Now let's go see how to do this back over in Excel. All right, after you've downloaded it, you simply click on the taskbar icon to open up Power BI Desktop. Now, Power BI Desktop, Power Query, the part where we import, clean, and transform data, that's the button right there. If we want to create DAX, calculated columns, or measures, we use the Modeling tab. And back over on Home, if we want to see relationships, we click there. Well, we don't have anything. Tables, we click there. And this is where we create our visualizations with all of these amazing visualization options over here. So where do we start? Well, we're going to start with Power Query. I'm going to go to the Get Data dropdown. I don't see from folder, which is what I need. So I'm going to click More, and there it is. Get data from folder, connect. Now this text box is exactly like Power Query. I click Browse. I go to the location where my folder is. Now what we're telling Power BI Desktop, just like with Power Query, is please get all the files in that folder right there. When I click OK, we'll see an intermediate step. I definitely want to click Edit. And this looks very similar to Power Query over in Excel. Now, we imported a bunch of files from that folder. We'll come back to this in a second. I want to first come over and name this. I'm going to highlight and name it. I called it Sales Zip Data and Enter. Now, that name is important. That's the name of the query, and it will be the name of the proper data set that will be imported. Now we have a bunch of files over here. I'm pretty sure that I'm only going to get .xlx's, but just in case I update that folder later, we could do some important safeguarding. I'm first going to right-click the extension and go down to Transform and say, please convert all these extensions to lowercase. That's just in case we get someone who named a file with uppercase. And the reason why is just like over in Power Query, Power BI Desktop is case sensitive. Now I want to assure that only Excel files are imported, so I click the filter, point to text filters. I want to say only import extensions that equal .xlsx. Click OK. Now that we have that filter, that means this import will only import .xlsx files. If in the future we accidentally put other types of files in there, they will not be imported. Now, we don't need any of these other columns. All we need is the content. So I'm going to come to Content, right-click, Remove Other Columns. Now, what we're left with is the Content column. If I click over to the side of Binary, I can see, sure enough, there are the Excel files. Now, in the latest November 2016 update of Power BI Desktop, that little double downward pointing arrow icon is supposed to automatically extract all of the objects from these Excel files. The problem is that the default behavior for extracting does not promote headers. And we need to promote headers for each one of our table. So I'm actually not going to use that new feature. That sort of seems like a potential flaw to me. We're going to have to do it the way that we do it over in Power Query in Excel. We're going to have to add an extra column and use the Excel.workbook function to extract the objects from each one of the Excel files. So I go up to Add Column, Custom Column. We're going to call this Get Excel Objects and Enter. And now down in the formula area, we type Excel.workbook, open parentheses. Now you got to make sure that everything's spelled correctly and you have the correct capitals. I can see right here that's not how you spell Excel. All right, so Excel.workbook, open parentheses. Now I come over here and double click the content. That's the Excel content in each one of those files. And the automatic feature in Power BI Desktop would do this, but comma. The second argument of Excel.workbook is for promoting headers. And if you use the automatic feature, it doesn't do that. So I'm going to type true in lowercase letters. That will automatically promote headers. Close parentheses. That will be our formula that will be copied down as an extra helper column. What that does now is if I click on the result of that Excel.workbook, I can see for the Arizona file, it extracted all of the different objects. And it did that for each one of the files. Now, we do not need the content column. So I'm going to right-click, Remove. Now we can use our double expanding arrows. This will expand to get at all of the objects and list them off to the right. So I'm going to click the double expanding arrow. I definitely want to uncheck Use Original Column Names. Click OK. Now, there's a number of columns here. That's the name of the object. There's our data. And actually, I can click on the Arizona sheet, and I see that the actual field names were promoted. That's because of our little true. Item, we can see it lists things like the full name of the filtered database and the print area. The kind, that's the type of object. We can see there's sheets, tables, and defined names. And then over here, whether it's hidden or not, the only one that's hidden is the fact that one of the tables was a filtered database. So this is the important column for us. We want to filter out all objects except for sheets. So I come up to the drop-down, text filters. Please only import items that equal, and we're going to put the name of the object, sheet, with a capital S. Click OK. And there it is. All of those non-sheet items have been filtered out. Now, if we look over in the names, the sheets we want are the proper state names. The sheets that have the default sheet name we do not want. So here we're going to use the filter, text filters, does not contain the word sheet. This means we will import all the sheets that do not contain the word sheet. Click OK. And now we're left with just, as we see down here in our preview, the tables from each one of the sheets with a state name. Now, the only two columns we need are state name and data. So I hold Shift, click on Data. I have both of these columns selected. Right-click, Remove Other Columns. And now we can use this arrow pointing to both sides expand button to click, get at all of the fields from those tables. Make sure that's unchecked. Click OK. That is pretty amazing. Now, I'm looking at the field names here. I see the first one needs to be called state. So I'm going to double click and name this state and enter. Date, zip code, product, payment, all of those look OK. Now I want to go through and make sure that the data types are the proper data type. Text, date, whole number, some sort of decimal. Now, since multiple columns are going to have data type text, I'm going to click on state. Then holding Control, I'm going to click on store, zip code, product, and payment type. Now I'm going to right-click, change type, and point down to data type text. I can see there's the ABC icon, meaning it's text. Now, this is the only column that has a date, so I'm going to click on that icon, ABC123, and point to data type date. Come over to units, click on the icon, point to whole number. Now, for amount of sales, I click, hold Shift, click on cost of goods sold, right-click, change type. And we want to notice something. Over in Power Query Excel, this option is called currency. Over here in Power BI Desktop, it's called fixed decimal number. Now, the reason is that the fixed decimal number will only include up to 4 decimals, whereas decimal includes up to 15 significant digits, just like over in Excel. I'm going to select this one. And look at that. It shows the same icon as over in Excel when we select currency. Now, we took all the separate tables, stacked them on top of each other. The official term in Power BI Desktop and over in Power Query is append the tables. We made sure we had the right data types. But now we need to do one further transformation. I need to take the amount of the sale and multiply times 1 minus the revenue discount. We're going to keep the units just in case we need to do analysis on the units. But the amount of the sale is not the total sale. So for this 4 items we sold, the total sale is not 1980. It's actually 1980 minus a 10% discount. So I'm going to add an extra column, add column, custom column. I'm going to call this net revenue. And now we could just multiply here, but I want to officially round. Now over here, we can't use round like Excel. We have to use number dot round. And just like our earlier function, we have to have the capitals and the spelling correct. Now I can, in the first argument, multiply certain fields I want. Amount of sales, so I discount, there it is in square brackets, times, open parentheses, 1 minus the revenue discount, close parentheses. Now I'm doing 1 minus because if I multiply just the revenue discount, it would give me the actual amount of the discount. And I want the net revenue, so that's what the 1 minus does. Now, comma, and we're rounding to the penny, so we put a 2 here, close parentheses. Now, number dot round doesn't round like the Excel spreadsheet round function. It rounds like the number dot round in Power Query or the VBA round or most databasing rounding, where it does halfway even rounding or bankers rounding. I'm going to click OK, and there's our new column. Click on the icon for data type, point to fixed decimal. Now I don't need revenue or amount of sales, so I click on the first, hold Shift, click on the second, right click, remove columns. Now we have our table that we can import into the Power BI data model. So now I go up to Home, and unlike Excel Power Query, where this is close and load, here it's close and apply. So I'm going to click close and apply. It's going to try and import. That's a lot of data. It's done. Over here, we can see the name of our table and all of our fields. The little sigma means those are numbers, not formulas or something. Over here, I can click on relationships. And sure enough, there is my table. I'm going to expand to see all of the fields, including some extra space because we're going to add some extra fields. Right there, that's the full view of the table. And right there, that's where we create our visualizations. Now we need to import one more table. I'm going to click on relationships. I'm going to go up to Get Data, click, and we have one more table from an Excel file. So I click on Excel. And wherever you download that file, we need to point to Excel Magic 1360 Excel. Double click. Now notice it's listing the objects, and the only object we want is that manager zip code table. That's an official Excel table. We see a preview here. I check it. I'm definitely going to click Edit to bring it into the editor. Now I see right there it's got the icon for 1, 2, 3, which means a whole number. I could see it added a step here. I'm going to click the red X to delete that step. Now I'm going to come over and highlight both columns, holding Shift. I click on this one, and I want both of them to be text. Right click, change type, and down to text. There we see my ABC. Now we're ready to close and apply. And now in our relationship view, we can see we have our two tables. Here is the fact table with all of our sales transactions. And we need to be able to make various calculations on our net revenue. And later, we're going to calculate gross profit. But we want to be able to show gross profit by manager. So now we're going to attach. This is the one side. There's a unique list of zip codes. I click and drag. And I drag it over to Store Zip Code. Now, notice if we were over in Excel Power Query, this would be a little bit more polite. But I'm going to hope that I got this right. I'm going to drop it right there. And if I click on the one-to-many relationship, we could see it got it right. Now, we could go over to our table. And if you wanted to see the table, that's our fact table or sales table. You could click on the manager table and see that. Now, our next step in modeling over here in Power BI Desktop is we want to calculate two things. We want to calculate a calculated column and a measure. Now, let's go look at our sales zip data here. I actually want to add an extra column that looks at the units and categorizes the transaction as retail if the number of units is less than 6. If it's greater than 6, we want to categorize it as wholesale. So now up in the Modeling tab, I can click New Column. Now, I have selected the sales table. So when I click New Column, and there's our new column. And look at that. Right up in the formula bar, it's highlighted. And I'm going to type sale type, then a space, then an equal sign, and a space. Now, if we were over in Power Pivot building a DAX calculated column, we would use an equal sign before we created our formula. That's the same over here in Power BI Desktop. I'm going to type the if function. Logical test, just like in Excel. But I'm not going to click on a cell. I'm going to type the name of this table, S, and I see the name of the table, and I'm going to down arrow until I get to the name of the table, and in square brackets, the field name. Then hit Tab. I'm going to ask the question anytime that is less than 6. So that'll be a logical test, comma. The result, if true, over in Excel, it's a value if true. In double quotes, I'm going to type retail. And double quotes, comma. And then the result, if false, is going to be in double quotes, wholesale. And double quotes, close parentheses. Now, that's pretty polite over here. Orange for the text, and then it has a slight blue aqua for the name of the function. Now, what's going to happen here is, notice this wasn't a cell reference like we'd see in Excel. This formula is going to know to copy all the way down the column, and by something called row context, it will know for the field units, for every particular record, it will look at the units in that row. Now when I hit Enter, all the way down, that's called a calculated column. Now, calculated columns are great when you want to add a condition or criteria for us retail or wholesale that we might want to use to filter our visualizations. If I look over here, table name, and there's our field names, and there it is. I can see calculated column. It has a little f of x. Now we want to calculate a measure. And a measure is going to be an actual calculation that we would want to filter. So for example, I'm definitely going to want to add net revenue, net cost of goods sold. Now we could do those with implicit calculations, but I'm going to use the sum function to add both of these, because then I'm going to make a gross profit calculation, which will be net revenue minus cost of goods sold. I'm going to go up to New Measure. We could see over here in our field list, there's a new icon. It's got a little calculator for measure. And up here it says measure equal sign. I'm going to type total revenue space equal sign space. And now this is very different than over in Power Pivot DAX. If I'm creating a measure over there, I'd have to type colon equal sign. But over here in Power BI Desktop, I just put an equal sign. Sum function. And then I'm going to down arrow to get the name of the table, and in square bracket, the field name. Close parentheses. And I definitely want to come up here and add a number formatting. So I'm going to click the drop down for $, and point to English United States. And I'm going to decrease the decimals to 0. And that will do it. There's my new measure. Now I want to create a new measure. I'm going to call this total cost of goods sold space equal sign space sum. And then I'm going to arrow down to get table name and field name. I want to add up cost of goods sold. Close parentheses. Come up here for the drop down. I want English and then 0 decimals. Now I'm going to create a new measure. And this one's going to be called gross profit equal sign space. And now watch this. I'm going to type a square bracket. For measures we create, like total cost of goods sold and total revenue, we simply list them in square brackets. So I'm going to down arrow, and when I see total revenue, tab. Now I'm going to type subtraction, square bracket, and I see measure. It doesn't have a table name and then the measure name. It's just the measure. That's the convention. Tab. And now I can come up and add my formatting. English, 0 decimals. I can see I have that gross profit over there. I'm going to add yet one more measure, new measure. This one's going to be called gross profit percentage, equals sign, space, square bracket. And now gross profit is highlighted, so I hit tab, divided by square bracket, down, down, total revenue tab. Come up and click percentage. And I definitely want to keep it as 2 decimal. Now, this number formatting, sometimes the visualization like a column chart will add its own number formatting. But other times, like when we drop our measures over here onto a card, this number formatting will show up. All right, now we're almost ready to go. We have our 2 tables. We have 1 calculated column. And then we have a couple 4 measures. Now, if we go back over to relationship view, we can see here's our sales table. And down at the bottom, there's our calculated column. There are our measures. Now we want to go and create the final step. I'm going to click on the blank white canvas. And here we get to build our visualizations for our dashboard. Now, the first visualization I'm going to use is I'm going to click on the map. And there's a map. This will go down in the lower right-hand corner. I'm going to come up to zip code managers, and I'm going to check zip code. And you can already see those zip codes are listed there. And then for the map, we want gross profit. So I'm going to check it. And here, right on our map, this is quite amazing. But each one of those represents gross profit amount for particular zip codes. Now, the next visualization we want is we want clustered bar. And actually, before I click on it, I want to click in the white so it creates a new one and doesn't change that one. All right, so click, and there is our clustered bar. I'm going to drag it down a bit. And this is where we want our managers. So I'm going to check managers. Nothing, but now we want to come down to gross profit and check. And there it is. We can resize it a bit, especially so we see the full name. Already we can see the amazing interconnectedness between these visualizations. If I click on Arcelia, instantly it zooms in on Washington. If I come down to Cassie, instantly it goes down to Arizona. To unfilter, I simply click in the white. Pretty amazing. Now I'm going to click in the white, and this will be for product. I want a clustered column, and we will select product. And here I want gross profit and gross profit percentage. Now, that's actually not the chart I want. So with the chart selected, I'm going to come over and select line and clustered column. Now, when I select that, I see it selected, and the chart's not working over here. But this is where the different areas of the visualization will help. It looks like it has column values for gross profit and gross profit percentage, but that's not what I want. I'm going to click and drag it down to the line value. And sure enough, there it is. Here's another thing. Right before we go any further, you know what? I think I want to change that word percentage to a percent symbol. So I'm going to come over here, right-click, rename. And I'm going to double-click the percentage and type a percent symbol and enter. And there, that's already looking a little bit better. Now I'm going to click in the white. I want the same clustered column and line. But on this one, I'm going to select payment type and then check gross profit. And so for gross profit percentage, I'm going to click and drag it right down to line values. Feels like I'm dragging to a pivot table. Now we can move these around a bit, resize. Now I'm going to click down in the white and come over, and there it is. I want a slicer. And this is where I'm going to drag my state, or simply check, and there are the states. And the last thing we want is a card. I'm going to come over there. That's a single card. I want multi-row card. So I click, resize it over here. And now this is where I want all my measures. I'm going to come over and check gross profit percentage, total revenue, and total cost of goods sold. I could come over and resize this a bit. And now let's see this In action, I'm going to select Arizona, and instantly everything is filtered. Click on California. Look at that. Click on Oregon. There's the map. I can look through payment method, product, manager. See the total numbers down here? That is absolutely amazing. All possible with Power BI Desktop. And we started this all out simply on the Home ribbon tab, getting data and bringing it in. And then we did some editing. That's a way to see the editing. There's all the steps. Once we got it in, we then imported a table, built a relationship, and then got busy building calculated columns, measures, and finally building our interactive dashboard with our visualizations. All right, that was a lot of fun with Power BI Desktop. We'll see you next video.